and we are here for our Policy and Ops Committee meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Our first item on our agenda is public comment. You can state your name, address, and limit your comments to no more than 30 seconds, 3 minutes.
That's crazy, Dan. Dang. How y'all doing? I'm D. Jones, passionate entrepreneur and visionary. It's a crazy day. So after I sit here and I listen to the policy and operations committee, I'm going to go to the neighborhood organization and I'm gonna go chill there. Then I'm gonna go to a local school around my neighborhood because they said that they're trying to build an esports lab and they're one of the GRPS schools that don't have an esports lab. So years ago, you know, I was just had a vision that nobody seen. I was told I was crazy, delusional, a lot of different things from people from different ethnicities, black people, but I believed in this vision that I seen. And I ended up doing all of these cool things. I influenced our school district. I influenced our library district. I just ran into Lance again at one of the libraries and it was cool, but he said that they got hacked, so they internet and everything been down for a little bit. But I say all of this just to say that I had a vision to actually bring esports and this technical CTE to our community, to our county, and I ended up doing that. And like I remember the ARPA funds, and the ARPA funds was there, and I put in the community center project, and I didn't even remember how it was graded or anything, and I don't even remember the commissioners that all supported because I was asleep at the time here, but. Now I'm the chair of the Stockton Community Hub. We were recommended by JLL. A lot of you commissioners actually supported that, and we're going to be getting that school. And now I'm still helping schools develop esports labs. So I haven't changed who I am. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still advocating. I'm still the same person on and off the internet. And I see that y'all got a social media policy. One day I hope that when you guys are streaming this, that we can stream this on Party, as we have a state government that has some bills for digital assets, and then we have Donald Trump, who is the president for cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. We have a federal Bitcoin reserve, and we're eventually going to have the Clarity Act passed. And then we'll have actually our financial institutions. We already have BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and Ondo. And all of these big financial institutions will have trillions on trillions, hundreds of trillions on the blockchain utilized for our community, and hopefully, like I said, we'll have it on our balance sheet, but this can be used for the social good. I don't care about the party. I know that this can actually be used for the social good because I actually am a feature creator. I get paid in Bitcoin to actually just speak about politics or to speak about economics or to speak about affordable housing. And if I like to smoke cannabis, because now cannabis is legal, I can smoke some cannabis on the stream and enjoy myself and talk about politics and affordable housing and things that I'm tired of not being changed by politicians. As somebody that's just a local citizen, as they say, act local, think global. One day I'll be a billionaire, trillionaire. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dee, appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to address the committee? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public comment of our meeting. Our next item on our agenda is special order of business. This is a state legislative update. Adam Wright from Midwest Strategy Group. Adam, thank you for being here for the first time and having it's a home game for you today.
It is,
right?
yes. This is the best commute. I love it. Well, good morning and welcome. I mean, we're glad to be here. Happy to represent Kent County in Lansing, and happy to be here. I was happy to have Kent County in Lansing last week for our Kent County Day. Many of you were there. Grateful for you being there to engage in the process. Because this is our first meeting, I want to just introduce ourselves a little bit. So Midwest Strategy Group, we're a team of 10 lobbyists in Lansing, and while I'm the front-facing person for Kent County, all 10 of us work for you. So we all have different specialties that we work in. I do a lot with local government, but Nicole Nystrom, who was our owner, she started the company 20 years ago, with a lot of adversity, leaving a different firm and starting her own. And back then, it was probably harder for women to go out on their own and start a business and start, especially in Lansing, the lobbying firm. And she did it. She brought on Dusty Fancher, and they have been going strong and have built to 10 lobbyists now. We're probably the second or third largest lobby firm in Lansing, and we couldn't be prouder of that and the hard work that we do. But it is a team effort, so it's not just me, it's not just Mike Crombie, who you've met, it's our entire team. And we are proud to be here and to support Kent County in your efforts in Lansing. Just want to preview a little bit about what I'll talk about today for the Lansing update. So first of all, we are looking at the budget. The budget is the biggest thing that you think that you'll see the legislature address over the next month. And so we saw the governor propose an $88.1 billion budget. The Senate passed their version, which is an $88 billion budget, and the House of Representatives passed their version of the budget, which is $78 billion. So that kind of set the stage. And I'll get more into each of these in a little bit. For policy initiatives, it's been interesting because Governor Whitmer last year signed 76 bills into law. And it's the fewest enacted laws since 1842. So far this year, the governor has signed 12 bills into law. So we're not seeing a lot of action on the policy front. Last year, the budget took a lot longer, and there was just less agreement because we have divided government with Republicans in control of the House, Democrats in control of the Senate, and a Democratic governor. And then I'll talk about a little bit at what's next. So the Detroit Regional Chamber Policy Conference, budget adoption, and primary and general elections that are coming up. So with a budget update, we just had our most recent consensus revenue estimating conference. And what this is, we have two of these each year, one in January and one in May. And what they are is they're nonpartisan folks from the House, Senate, fiscal agencies, and the state budget office that estimate, based upon tax revenue, how much money will come in to the state of Michigan on an annual basis. And they do an initial one in January to kind of kick off the budget process, and then they do another one in May to revise the numbers so the legislature can utilize that to help finish their budget and get that going for the year. What we found in the May Revenue Estimating Conference is the revenue projections are slightly higher than in January, but still down year over year. And for the fiscal year 27, combined general fund and school aid revenues were revised upward about $174 million, but the school aid fund is still expected to remain more stable because it was shielded from any road funding changes made last year with the tax swaps. With revenue sharing, which is something that we watch very closely for Kent County, the House version of the budget increased county revenue sharing by just shy of $20 million. And the Senate passed in their budget a revenue sharing trust fund. And they also passed the policy bills to go along with that. And why that's important is the trust fund would earmark a certain portion of the state sales tax for revenue sharing. So if we can get this signed into law and as part of the budget deal, local governments, Kent County, all local governments won't have to go and beg the legislature year after year for revenue sharing. It'll be formulaic by the state, the earmark in the state sales tax revenue. And so getting that in place would be security for revenue sharing in perpetuity. And then LDSI requests, we have submitted some LDSI, which is legislatively directed spending items for Kent County. And we had, the undersheriff was in town a couple of weeks ago to testify on one of those, and we're working with your entire delegation to try to get those for the county. Some of the policy initiatives that we're watching are property tax proposals. And I'll go through a couple of them first and then focus more on what's going on in the House. The governor's plan, she wants to do a property tax credit for seniors. That'd be up to 10% credit for seniors on their property taxes, which would cost about $90 million. The Senate Appropriations Chair wants to expand the homestead property tax credit, which would cost about $300 million a year. But probably the biggest plan that's out there that many people are talking about is the Speaker of the House's plan, House Republicans, which would cost $5 billion. And the plan is to eliminate several taxes at the state level. So the state education tax, the real estate transfer tax, personal property taxes. This is the House Republicans' top priority. And what has been said is the plan is to replace that with expanding the sales tax revenue into services. Unidentified services at this point, the speaker has said luxury services. That's not identified what these luxury services would look like. And so the jury's out on the plan until we know what the revenue replacement looks like. And if it's going to be dollar for dollar, initially, they have said it will not be dollar for dollar. And the way the bills are written, our schools are taken care of first to backfill their dollars, and local governments are not. So we have to be very cognizant of that and work together with all of your legislators from Kent County to make sure that they're supportive. Now, the House did pass the tax cut portion of this plan last week. They did not, however, pass the bill that puts the revenue mechanism in place to backfill schools or to backfill local governments. And so the speaker has said this will be part of budget negotiation. The governor's office doesn't want it to be part of budget negotiation, and Majority Leader Brinks has said she doesn't necessarily see it as a serious plan because none of the revenue has actually been identified through legislation. So that is something we'll be watching very closely as the budget unfolds over the next month. So we'll see the budget hopefully done by June 30th. That's a statutory deadline that they have to hit. Some of the other things that we're talking about, I mentioned the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. Those bills have passed the Senate, as I've said, and they're in the House. And we are talking to all members in the House of Representatives and asking them to support these bills. Next one is Trial Court Funding Commission. So the State Court Administrator's Office has been working with this commission to decide how to best fund courts moving forward. Part of the plan that they've put together says, well, let's take all this money, we'll bring it to the state, and then we'll distribute it to locals and counties on the most appropriate basis. And I know it's really hard to believe, but many Lansing legislators and many local governments have said, we don't trust the state will actually do that. And we don't trust the state won't keep some of it, or we don't trust that the state will actually distribute it in the most fair and equitable way. And so they're still having conversations about that. There was a bill, though, House Bill 5452, sponsored by Representative Leitner, which will eliminate the sunset on court fees. And so that's important because this legislation that allows for court fees to be charged will end at December 31 of this year. So without that, courts will not be able to charge any sort of fees for people that have committed crimes. And so this is something that the sunset was eliminated and is on the House floor, and we're asking leadership to take that up so that we can get that passed. There are also drain code bills that we're monitoring to modernize the drain code. It's a heavy lift, and we'll see if things can happen. There's also a statewide septic bill that's out there. We expected that they would have some sort of a hearing last week, but that was canceled, so that has slowed down as well. So what's next? As I mentioned, the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce, a policy conference begins today. People from Lansing, Detroit, all over Michigan will be heading up to Mackinac Island to listen to the governor will be there to talk about what she wants to do. Legislators will be there, and associations all throughout the state will be there to talk about the vision for Michigan. And as you can see, that their theme is a quest for common ground, and they're urging leaders to rise above divisiveness and try to champion pragmatic solutions that help everyone here in Michigan. And we hope they do that. Also, the budget adoption is next. So Michigan has a constitutional deadline to get the budget done. That's October 1st. We pushed the limits on that as a state last year, and for probably the first time since I've worked in Lansing, and I started in 1999, I saw us go into a shutdown for a few hours. It was new to me, but we pushed it right up to the deadline. And they passed like a continuing sort of resolution and then got the budget done a couple of days later. But there's also a self-imposed statutory deadline that the legislature has imposed. That is July 1st. And so the goal every year is to try to get the budget done by July 1st, June 30th, July 1st, so that schools and local governments have a good idea of what their budget will look like as they are going to be adopting their budgets in that time frame as well. I will say that the statutory deadline of July 1st that they have, there's no penalty if they don't adhere to their own deadline. And this year, the primary election is going to be held on August 4th. Political parties obviously will choose their nominees, you know how it works, and then the general election will be held on November 3rd. And that will help decide control of the Michigan legislature and other top offices in the state. And so this is going to be critical for what Michigan looks like over the next 2 years. Whoever wins the House and Senate and governor's office will dramatically change how we govern and how we operate here in the state of Michigan. And so what we'll do is we'll be monitoring that. We all love to be prognosticators and say who we think will win, but we won't really know until Election Day. But our strategy with Kent County will change depending on who wins each of those races. And so we will sit down with county administration staff to develop a strategy that's most beneficial for the county, whether it is going harder after revenue sharing or whether some of the other priorities that we have. It's going to be just critical that we look at this and that we understand who's going to be in charge in the state Senate, in the state House, and who our new governor will be. And the last bullet point on this slide I have is lame duck question mark. So after the election, the session that happens after any sort of general election, we call a lame duck election because the elected officials aren't up for election, and so they've already had that, and so they feel like they're a little more freer to vote the way that they want to. So this lame duck legislative session will occur, or it may not occur. We don't know. Because we have divided government, and depending on what happens in the elections, there may not be a real motivation, whether it's on the speaker's part or whether it's on the Senate Majority Leader's part, to advance a lot of bills because they don't see eye to eye on many things. Now, in terms past, you've seen if it's all Democrat control or all Republican control, you've definitely seen lame duck turn into a very robust legislative session. And they're passing hundreds of bills, and I'm not kidding you, hundreds of bills through the legislature in that November, December time period. And so because of divided government, we're not certain if there will be a lame duck. And if there is, though, we'll obviously watch it because that's where a lot of things that you thought were dead will come back to life. And finally, it's an election year. As we know, the Office of Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, State Senate, and State House are all up for election. It's going to be a busy ballot. And a couple of ballot initiatives as well will be up. Mop Up Michigan, which is money out of politics, we believe will make the ballot. This is one where it's aimed at big state utility companies and making sure that they can't give money and influence Lansing in a certain way. And we believe there'll be a citizens voting initiative saying that you have to be a citizen of the United States to be able to vote. We believe that those two will at least be on the ballot this fall. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair, that any of the committee members may have.
Well, thank you, Adam. Commissioners, comments or questions for Adam? Commissioner Hennessy.
We have to have a question.
Oh,
For
I
the
know we
people to
will
put their
with this
hands
group.
up. Under the House, the trust fund proposal, what does that do for us in terms of what we receive now under revenue sharing, what we might receive in the future, and how that might increase going into future years.
So it's a bit of a gamble in some sense, right? Because what it does is it takes a portion of the state sales tax and it puts it in the trust fund, right? So it automatically goes in there. And it's not monopoly, you don't have to pass go or anything, and that's the go part is the legislature, right? And that's always the concern that local governments have, is that when the economy goes down, revenue sharing is a big chunk of money that it's easy to take money out of, right? And so if you put it in the trust fund, it becomes a restricted fund and they no longer can just take money out of it. And so how much is available in there will depend on state sales tax revenues. So as the state sales tax revenues go up, the amount available for distribution out of the trust fund also goes up. But if state sales tax revenues go down, the amount available for distribution would also go down. But the important part of it is that it can be very predictable and we know it's gonna be there and we don't have to fight the legislature for it on an annual basis in the appropriations process.
Okay, good. That explains a lot. I know that this has been one that people have been favoring and wanting to pass. Do you think it will pass?
I'm glad that the Senate passed it. It's gonna be part of negotiations with the budget now. I don't know if, so the governor's office hasn't favored it for a long time, and the reason why they don't favor it is because it takes a big portion, it takes a ton of money off the balance sheet for them to be able to utilize and play around with, and the legislature's the same way. So, we're pushing hard for it, and I know we are, the Michigan Association of Counties is as well. I don't know if it'll pass. Revenue sharing will, I think, go up. But it's really hard for Lansing to give up that control, right? And say, okay, we're gonna put this in statute so you can have a trust fund. We're gonna work really hard, but I don't know if it will.
Right, good question. Thank you for that follow-up question, because that's what I had as well. What's the chances?
Yeah, what are the chances? Well, can I ask another one? This great big elephant, this $5 billion of various tax cuts that could come our way. So what are the prospects there? We heard at the MAC meeting, we had a session and we heard it laid out, and there, we also heard someone from a tax foundation say, when you have these things, you have to know how are you going to make up for the revenue and what services exactly are you talking about being cut? So maybe you could just go into a little bit more depth. Is this likely to pass?
Well, it has passed the House.
Okay.
And it sounds like the speaker wants to make it part of the budget process, which he demonstrated last year that he built the roads funding deal around the budget as well. And he brought the budget all the way up until the deadline and passed the deadline in October last year to get accomplished what he wanted accomplished. And so we're not certain that he'll take it that far, but if he's gonna build it into the budget, that could be his leverage point to try to get it done. So there's several concerns that we have, right? One, that it's not a dollar for dollar replacement for local government. The second issue that we have is that we're seeing last year with the roads funding package, they passed a wholesale marijuana tax. And they expected around $420 million to come in. Well, it's not going to hit that $420 million mark. So estimates are higher than what the actual revenue is going to be. We also have that fear with expanding the sales tax into services, that if you start taxing certain services, consumers will not utilize those services as much, and so the estimates that they have could be higher than what the revenue comes in at. And so if it's already not a dollar for dollar replacement and the revenue doesn't come in as high as they expected, it becomes twice a bigger problem for local government. And so that's why we're trying to monitor it, and we are monitoring it and working with legislators. We talked to Senator Brinks herself about it last week when we were in Lansing, and she's very aware of the concerns that we have. And like I said, she doesn't see it as a serious proposal because they haven't laid out exactly what services so far would be included, because they haven't passed the bill to go along with the tax cuts.
So sometimes you ask for the sky and you want something in between. Is that and you end up with something that's sort of in between. Is that likely? I mean,
Certainly.
we
I
don't
mean,
know, but the point is, we don't know the impacts of all this as they're talking about it right now, and as the House is directing this legislation.
I mean, we do know the impacts of a $5 billion cut.
Okay.
We understand that. It's just what that revenue replacement will look like and how they will structure that. And that's why it's a trust but verify thing, right? Where, okay, we trust that you say you're going to do something, and they've tie-barred the bills that they passed to the revenue replacement bill, but the revenue replacement bill still sits in the House, and it's pretty easy to break a tie bar. But that's at least signaling to me that they want to pass this revenue replacement as well. But I think the House wants to have negotiations with the Senate on what that revenue replacement looks like. And so far, the Senate has said, I want nothing to do with it.
So are we going to have a budget by July 1st?
That's what the law says they're supposed to do. I think that's still the goal. The goal is to still do that. But I think this complicates things a lot, right? And I believe that the first time, actually, when we met with the speaker's staff, for the first time, the administrator, when he asked them directly, will we have a budget by then? Their response was, I don't know how to give you a straight answer on that, right? And so we're like, so that signaled to me that there could be some complicating factors, and this property tax cut package, I think, is that.
Thank you.
You know, Commissioner Hennessy, I was just watching you, and I knew you had one more thing to say, so I was not going to Commissioner Steck until you had that last
Well, he did not
question.
have his hand up right away.
Commissioner Steck.
And I'm shocked at your reluctance to accept the representation that they'll have that budget. But anyway, so Adam, again, apologies for being late because you probably addressed everything I'm going to ask you about. But and my apologies to the chair. Clearly, AI has not solved accidents on the expressway yet. So one of the things that at least some of us are watching is the status of the extension of indigent defense to juveniles. What's the status of that, and what's the prospect for that?
So I know that there's a bill right now to create a commission for it, and that bill hasn't moved. We do have a call into Senator Singh's office, who's sponsoring the bill, to get more of an understanding of if he's worked with stakeholders, what he's doing, and if he believes it will move forward. And so we have that schedule, we have it in the scheduling portal, but we haven't had an opportunity to sit down with him yet. So I can't give you an idea if that will happen.
So indigent defense is expensive, and certainly extending it to juveniles will be expensive. What's the prospect, what's the projection cost on that?
I'm not certain. So they haven't done, normally when a bill gets introduced and it gets into committee and they're going to take it up, the Senate Fiscal Agency will do a cost analysis of it, and so I don't think that's been done. And that's something we'll ask Senator Singh when we meet with him, is if they have a cost projection for what that will be, and if they're going to help pay for it.
Yes, of course. So on the other one, I'm just curious your thoughts on, there is a bill at some stage that may have gone through the Senate on requiring licensing to sell cigarettes. What's the status of that?
I'm not certain of that. I'll have to take a look. I'm
Okay.
not familiar with that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions for Adam? All right, again, appreciate you being here today. Very nice, thorough presentation, and nice to get you not quite on a quarterly, but pretty doggone close from the time you came on board. So we do tend to have a couple of these a year, or 2 or 3 of them. So I know we'll be inviting you back probably before elections and then right away after. So see what kind of games we can expect. So again, thank you so much, Adam.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Appreciate it. All right, our next update is our federal legislative update. Steve Carey is on the line. I think Charlie might be there as well. There we go,
Hey,
Steve.
Harrison.
I got a frozen screen, Steve, so do I.
See if we can get you on frozen. Can you both hear us, Steve and Charlie?
Oh, I hear somebody.
There we go.
Here we go.
Welcome, Steve and Charlie. It is your floor. If you can go ahead, give us an update.
Good to see all the commissioners. Actually, I can't see you. I'm sorry that you can see me. I was given instructions to go over the next 90 minutes, the politics and policies of Washington DC, and I'm sure you're excited about that. Don't worry, I'm just kidding.
Steve, staff has given me a gong, by the way. Steve,
What's that?
staff has given me a gong, the old gong show. I think I'd gong you before that.
I'm old enough to remember, and I love it. Again, good to see you. It is a pleasure to work for you in Washington, D.C. We have a few slides. I promise to breeze through them and then just take your questions afterwards. So with that, if I could ask my colleague to pass to the next slide, please, my county colleague. Slide 2. Or do I have control of that? No. There we go. Just an overall view of what's happening in Washington, D.C. Back to slide 2 if we could.
Okay.
There we go. Right now, there's narrow margins. I think we all see that in Washington, D.C. And again, the reason I'm going to breeze through this is because I know that everybody that I'm talking to right now is following what's happening in Washington, D.C. But look, there are deep partisan divisions, and they continue in both chambers. Major legislation is increasingly difficult without, temporary compromises. And those compromises we're just not seeing as we have in the past. We can expect that this upcoming fiscal year process, the fiscal year 2027 process, will experience continuing resolutions as we have in the past few years, because while the House is passing their appropriations bills, I'm going to get into that in more detail, the numbers are not to what the Democrats would like. And because the process is so slow, and because they're not going to pass these bills by October 1, you can expect that the Democrats, who will expect to win in November, will want to revamp these numbers. And I'll get into that detail a little bit more into this presentation, but that's just the overall process on appropriations. Increased oversight and political tension. Look, there's a lot of investigations and oversight hearings, and it's consuming significant congressional bandwidth. The election year politics is slowing what is normally a bipartisan process and cooperation. And various agencies are receiving mixed signals on spending priorities, and that goes back and forth. It's not necessarily the agency's fault. It's not necessarily Congress's fault. They're both competing with each other because, as you recall, and as I've reported in the past, like last year, during all of those DOGE cuts, you'll recall that the Republican Congress actually replenished those budgets that DOGE cut. So we're seeing kind of that same thing play out. Add that to the fact that this administration was extremely late in submitting its budget. Typically, you can expect a budget to be submitted in January, February. Well, it was submitted in early April, and even with those numbers, they weren't as detailed as normal. They were more broad numbers and not specific. And so what counties are seeing is, delayed guidance. I know that you're seeing delayed guidance on grants and reimbursements and slower federal agency response times. And so We recognize that. We keep beating the drum to speed up the process for your sake. Before we go to next slide, Charlie, anything to add?
Just one more thing, Steve. There has been a lot of talk in the president's budget the past few years on some cuts that do hit counties, like community development block grants, transit funds, infrastructure funds, climate funds, and HUD home program, just to name a few. So that might add to some of the confusion about where these programs stand right now.
Okay, slide 3, please. And I'm wondering, Chairman, as we go through this, if people want to ask questions in the context of our presentation, that's an option too. So feel free to do that if you'd like, or we can wait to the end. Slide 3. Okay. Elevated regulatory activity impacts on local government. Look, there's an increased compliance and reporting requirements. We see it all of the time. It's this administration, especially the Office of Domestic Policy, the Office of Management and Budget. I even hear, by the way, off the record, from various agency officials who are equally frustrated, as frustrated as you are, about some of the things that are happening to their agencies for OMB to come in and say, hold on, we can't release this yet. We would like to take a quick look at it before we issue those grants for oversight. So it's been a frustration on everybody's part, because they're asking for performance matrices tied to the funding. And in some cases, I've talked to agency officials, and they had posted grant awards for a variety of functions in government, only to see them pulled off their website. This is something I've never seen before, but again, it's the Office of Management and Budget and other operatives in the administration just wanting to re-review the spending priorities. And you will also see various things that we haven't seen in the past, greater emphasis on climate, equity, resilience standards, etc. So they're looking through those items, counties, cities, healthcare organizations, you name it, education, etc., wide variety of grants, etc. Next slide, please. All right, this is the big challenge for everybody. I said I would get into this a little bit more in more detail. The administration's budget submissions, they were significantly behind. And again, as they were submitted, they didn't give specifics. They were more broad brush, more bigger dollar rather than policy oriented. So that left it to Congress to have to try to fill in the blanks. And with that, at least the House is moving on a number of those bills. They've passed a number of them. The Senate hasn't moved yet. They just last week identified what their top line number would be. When I say top line, that's the entire discretionary spending funding from which they will create those smaller figures for each function of government: Interior, Education, Healthcare, Department of Defense, etc. So with that, a higher likelihood, the delay is a higher likelihood of continuing resolutions, an omnibus potential, though the Speaker has said he does not like omnibus bills. We've passed a few minibus bills. That's where a few of the 12 subcommittees are passed as separate functions, maybe 3 bills here, 3 bills there, 4 bills, etc. But we will probably not see a gigantic omnibus before the end of December. And I think we should all be on notice that there are some shutdowns potentially looming. Again, if they pass a continuing resolution, which they'll have to do, They will not pass any of these bills and get them signed into law before October 1. They'll have to pass a continuing resolution. And once and if, by conventional wisdom and historic perspective, the Democrats take over on the House side, they will not want to pass the same bills that are passing currently into next year. And so that's where the potential shutdown will occur. Because I don't see this administration wanting to be too flexible with the House Democrats or vice versa. So we all need to brace ourselves for that potential. Just a couple other things that we need to consider, that we need to weigh in. Look, the debt is $36 trillion. And we're spending $1 trillion on interest alone. And you can imagine if there were a mechanism where we could pay down that debt, what we could do with that extra $1 trillion in what is currently a $7 trillion budget. Why should counties care? Look, this is all delayed project approvals and grant distributions. It's pressure on your discretionary spending programs, and it's increased scrutiny of all of the federal, local funding partnerships, and sometimes potentially the possible elimination of them. So that's why the county should be concerned about that. Charlie, anything that I've missed? If not, we can move on. These are some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, I will comment on that.
Okay.
Slide.
Okay, I've already gone into this, but it's a little bit more succinct. Again, in short, the House Appropriations Committee has marked up many of its 27 bills. Subcommittee actions have been initiated for THUD and Interior. Those are important to counties and other various municipalities. The Senate is expected to act fairly soon. Next slide. I got to hand it to your government affairs folks at the county level. They've done a fabulous job. Josh, Lori, your agency heads, who've pooled their knowledge, resources, needs together to submit to the members of Congress in a very expedited and consolidated time frame. Josh Spencer, who's my most immediate direct report, and I were equally shocked at the deadline that was imposed on us. We were given, I want to say, 10 days, and he pulled it together, and we did get our delegation to submit on the county's behalf. And so that's step one. Step two is actually getting the committees to agree. But you'll see some of these items that were submitted, and that's a testament to your team, but also the commitment of the two members of the House and your two senators. My state colleague who just spoke ahead of me about camaraderie and hoping that there's bipartisanship. In your two House members, you've got outstanding members. Hillary Skolton reaches across the party aisle on everybody's behalf, and she's phenomenal at that. As is John Molinar. Molinar is equally bipartisan, gets along well, and is very deferential to his colleagues on the Democratic side. So we're very fortunate. Kent County is very fortunate for that. Next slide, please. Again, more submissions here that Congresswoman Skolton provided. I have to assume that Josh and his team has already provided those to you. Next slide. Same Senate side, Peters and Slotkin submitted these for you. Peters, expansion of the domestic violence court, and the THUD program that Senator Slotkin has submitted on our behalf. And mind you, these aren't passed yet. We still have to get the committee to submit or to accept, and we have to get the whole process behind us, and that's what I told you about 3 minutes ago, that we're in a precarious state on appropriations. Next slide, please. I guess that was it. Lucky you. So I could keep going, and I'm happy to if you'd like.
No, we'll get to some commissioners' questions. Commissioners? I know we'll have a couple anyways. Steve, I guess I got a
I was
couple.
thinking, I would just give, the competition is fierce in Washington DC for federal dollars. And I would, if and when you see one of your federal officials or their staff, just thank them. Thank them for paying attention to us, because I know that the House members receive literally hundreds of appropriations requests. And the senators request over 1,000. I'm sorry, they receive over 1,000 requests. The fact that they submitted for us speaks volumes about their commitment to Kent County and its citizens. So just thank them if you have that opportunity.
Right. Steve, when you mention that fierce competition, does it make a difference that I see a lot of our requests are not these large requests? As far as requests are concerned, $750,000 seems minuscule compared to these larger requests other folks are asking for. Does that make a difference when competition's fierce, or when they start cutting, they don't really care the dollar amount?
It's interesting. There were some caps of various projects in different subcommittees of about $3.5 million, and I tried to think if that was Interior or T-HUD, but let's just say, let's stick with the number. There were only 3 or 4 projects that actually saw $3.5 million submitted, and those happened to be the full committee chairman or a subcommittee chairman. And these members are limited in what they can request. They can't request. It's not like the days when I first started on Capitol Hill in the 90s, where it was limitless. But yeah, the pie is shrinking for sure. But at least we do have these. You'll recall there was a 10-year gap where we could not get any federally directed funding. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but we're not there yet.
All right, Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. Steve, at our last delegation that we brought to Washington, D.C., and thank you very much for hosting us, we brought the priority of appropriations for the airport tower. And how are we doing on that?
I believe we got funding for the airport. That is not something that is directly, Charlie, let's look that up. I should have had that, because that is not, I believe you were provided funding, though. Let me get right back to you on that one, if that's okay. There's a separate organization that advocates on behalf of the airport.
Okay, well, thank you for the update.
Commissioner.
I'll get that right to Josh as soon as I can, and maybe before you leave the break this morning.
Commissioner Hennessy.
I'm going to go back to one of your first comments. Narrow margins equals slow decision-making. And we have a number of proposals that you've laid out for us that have been made by our congressional delegation. So yeah, and it is surprising that the airport isn't number one, but I'm glad that it's not right there at the top of our list. But, it does, just makes me wonder. I mean, what's possible? Narrow margins equals slow decision-making. What's possible?
Question about the airport? Or-
Well, no, just generally, I mean, these are, actually, the list is, I didn't write them all down, I don't have them in front of me, but it's just, there seems more they're softer projects in juvenile justice or housing, not things that stand out, like, the airport tower, that's a big project, it stood out. So with these other projects where they're broader, and it's important to our impact at the very local level, but what are the possibilities?
It's a great question. I've noticed over the course of my over 35 years working in DC, we have become less bold on infrastructure, I will say. During the first Trump administration, there were 2 attempts to pass an infrastructure bill, none of which were very serious. They proposed, rolling out new highways and roads or construction, what have you, but paid for through tolls, et cetera. So they really didn't go anywhere. And then the previous administration did pass, with the Congress obviously, passed a very robust, aggressive infrastructure bill that would benefit, water, highways, airports, et cetera. But there were a number of sitting members who were threatened by a certain, candidate to vote against. And yet it still passed, but with very, very narrow margins. There was this threat that if you voted for this infrastructure bill, there would be a campaign against you. And a lot of Republican members who voted for that bill actually were ousted. And so there's this tension that I can't explain. We've got to break out of it. And I don't have that answer, but it's just as an observer, as somebody kind of in the trenches for the past 35 years, I don't understand it because our competition overseas, they are investing in infrastructure, et cetera. So in those dollar figures in the projects that we listed that you're identifying that seem softer, those are projects within the parameters that are given to us by the Appropriations Committee. They've become slimmer and slimmer. The lawmakers would argue that they are trying to have more oversight, that there was a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in this process. I agree that there was some, but largely it was above board. There wasn't a project that I advocated for when I was working in the House side or the Senate side that we didn't issue a press release about. We were very proud of that. But there were a few of the nefarious characters who've ruined it for all of us. And so that's another reason why we can't go bold.
All right, thank
Thank you.
you. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. So I'm not sure who to put this question to, but I'm a little surprised that the air traffic control tower, new one at the airport, is not number 1 on the list. Does the airport have their own lobbyist, federal lobbyist, who is now primarily responsible for this, and we've not asked Steve to do that, or are we asking both?
There's been another firm that has been involved in that for years. I think years ago, upon working on your behalf, I did extend, my hand to assist, but I think that, they're just working on their own. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just telling you that, I did try, but they are doing their own work on that front.
So,
I should still have the answer to you, and I'm not happy. All right, so what I have here, I did just quickly research it. Congresswoman Skolten did submit two projects for 2027 for the airport. 1.062 million for taxiway Z1 rehab, and then 1.296 million for taxiway J. Senator Slotkin, 2027 THUD request 11.34 for expanded baggage claim facilities, and then Senator Peters for the same, $4 million for that. So that is what was submitted.
yeah, and I'm not unhappy with you, Steve. Don't take me wrong. I guess I was understanding that we were also asking you to work aggressively to pursue that tower, regardless of what the airport's doing. But if we haven't, given you the charge to do that, then that's on us. But so.
It's a bit delicate for me here, but I'm hearing you loudly and clearly, and I will talk with Josh and Lori and the administrator, and with your direction, I'll figure this out. I'll work with the other organization and plow through. Because frankly, I'm proud of the relationship I personally have, professionally have, with the delegation and with the key players on the transportation committees, both the authorizers and appropriators. So with that, I'll step it up.
Well, clearly, I can't give direction. I can only ask questions, but you'll check with the powers that be, so thank you for that. So my other question, though, Steve, is, and we've talked, I'm sure with you and certainly with others, there's this longstanding conversation about CMS moving its rules that preclude pretrial detainees from continuing to have Medicaid. Is there any action on that? What do you know about that?
It's a moving target. I wish I could give you specifics, but I can't because, well, there's been a number of changes. Certainly at Homeland, and Homeland works hand in hand with HHS. As you recall, the Secretary of Homeland was replaced by former Senator from Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen, and he's taken certain actions on different fronts, mostly on ICE, et cetera, but I don't think that there have been any more concrete decisions or even discussions on that issue between HHS and DHS. Now that said, I don't think it falls squarely on them. This is one of those Office of Domestic Policy decisions, Office of Management and Budget at the White House itself. And so that's probably what's tying their hands.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is maybe a little bit off topic, but since you have a pulse on what's going on federally, I was just curious if you heard anything for some damage control just regarding fuel prices. I know that our sheriff patrols and the other county vehicles use that a lot, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to kind of buffer us against those costs as they continue to rise. Just because the Strait of Hormuz has been off for like 87 or 83 days now.
I'm actually not off topic at all. I think that this is helpful for me because I've not heard of this issue before, though it makes complete sense. I can only tell you from a 30,000 foot level that here in DC, people are extremely concerned about the conduct of this war. People won't say it, depending on which side of the aisle they're sitting on, but they are very concerned about this. They're hearing from you, they're hearing from their other constituents, but we are going through our fuel reserve, and there's no clear response or answer. Department of Energy observers are all extremely concerned, and but I have not heard of any solutions for what you just raised. But I think it's a good one, and I think that it's those things that we need to hear more of that I can bring to the Hill. So thank you for raising it. I just don't have an answer for you.
Sure, that's okay. I mean, I know that Spirit Airlines are already closed because of, partly a failed merger, but also because of fuel costs. So I just wouldn't want the county, especially like in a state of scarcity and potential emergency, to be, without the ability to execute emergency services.
Great, thank you. Any other commissioner questions or comments? All right, Steve and Charlie, again, appreciate you being here, kind of a little later than a quarterly meeting, but look forward to having you here later in the year as well. And again, appreciate your time this morning.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure working for my home county. Thank you. Only it doesn't have to wait for one of these formal presentations. Reach out anytime. I'm here for you.
Great, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, commissioners, on the comments and questions. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion and support? Motion by DeBoer, supported by LeGrand. Any commissioners' comments, questions, or concerns or changes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes. 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 All those opposed, last meeting's minutes have been approved. We have two action items on our agenda today. They will both go to full board this coming Thursday. The first item is brought to us by the Administrator's Office, the social media policy. Can I have a motion and support, please? Motion by Commissioner LeGrand, supported by Commissioner DeBoer. Al?
Yes, this is part of our continuing saga to get all county policies on a 3-year cycle. Some had gotten seriously out of date. This policy, really two substantive things. One is removal of the sentence which prohibited TikTok, and the other is updating the county URL designation. Otherwise, it's a rewrite. We did send a red line version out with a weekly update. The next one, I'll just say them both now, I'll get it out of the way, but the next one is a performance management policy. That was basically a rewrite to bring it into conformance with the board's standing rules, and the board did receive both the proposed and the current in the weekly update.
Great, thank you, Al. Appreciate your work on this. I know, I think in some cases, there's been 11 years since policy has been reviewed on some things, and again, appreciate you and your staff's willingness and eagerness to bring that back
Hard work.
to us. Commissioners' comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? That will go to full board this coming Thursday. Next item is again brought to us by our Administrator's Office, Performance Management Policy. Can I have a motion by Commissioner DeBoer, supported by Commissioner Morris? And Al already had his comments and questions. Are there any other board commissioners? Minority Vice Chair Faber.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, how often do departments kind of revisit their performance metrics? It's up to them whenever they do that, or what's kind of the process for?
There's an annual process for that. I know that Sandra, would you like to make a comment on that? She has overseen that process for a number of years now. While she's walking up, we initially set that up many moons ago to be an annual process, and we put them all in a book, but they were part of the budget process. So, Sandra.
Good morning, Commissioners. I meet with each department. Well, I shouldn't say I do. I try to meet with each department. I put myself out there to offer my assistance to each department on an annual basis. I will say most departments do take me up on my offer. And what I do in those meetings is I prepare them to come before you. I try to let them know what kinds of questions might be asked. I try to ensure that they are constantly looking at and refreshing their measures. Do they still make sense? Are we counting things just to count things? Are we really taking an in-depth look to see, to make sure that those measures are meaningful, not only to you as commissioners, but also to the departments and their staff? to make sure that they are in line, they're aligned with the strategic plan. And whether it's, of course, the overarching strategic plan, but many departments have their own strategic plans. So we try to make sure that those measures do make sense and that they are constantly taking a look at them to make sure that they are measuring the right things.
If I could also just add one other thing, many of our larger departments have a large number of metrics that they have to report to the state or the feds annually. And many times, such as in the case of the courts, those metrics can be part of a case for additional funding. For example, if SCAO has a certain case resolution requirement within a certain time frame, if we're missing and we need some kind of investment in technology or people to meet that requirement, then that could be the basis of a budget request. So I think a safe answer is at least annually.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It looked like you had another question after that and then pulled back, so. All right. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? Sandra, thank you for those answers. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed, that will again move to full board this coming Thursday. Commissioners' comments. Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you guys recognize the biblical comparison here of our representatives, legislative representatives. Adam and Steve, Adam and Eve. Never mind.
Any other commissioners' comments or questions? All right, Minority Vice Chair Faber.
Yeah, thanks. I probably should have said it while Adam was here, but for those of us that participated in the legislative day on last Tuesday, was that right? I thought it was really well put together. Thank you to staff for coordinating and working on that. I know we had a couple hiccups because of this session going out on that Tuesday and not being able to meet with a couple folks. But again, I thought going in with our priorities, it felt a lot better this year, I think, than years past. So just kudos. And then the continued commitment to sort of updating and thinking forward. As Adam mentioned, we're going to have a lot of moving parts here going into the fall, and I'm hoping we can continue this sort of education as we craft how we're going to head into 2027. But again, thank you to everyone involved in putting that together.
Great. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Hennessy.
I wasn't able to participate with the, legislative visit last week, with our lobbyists last week, but I did go to the MAC meeting this spring, and it was interesting because it was an introduction to many of the topics that he has raised and that are being taken up by either the state Senate or the House. And so, I was, really pleased with the timeliness and the quality of the speakers at the MAC convention. And if they continue that, it's really worthwhile to go to.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? All right, at this point in time, the June 9th meeting, there is nothing tentatively scheduled. We have our action requests out of the way today for that. So June 9th meeting, unless something comes up that's more of an emergency, I will be sending, or Taylor will be sending something out to cancel that first meeting in June. Of course, July, we are working on that same schedule. I believe Board Chair Green, I believe they're planning on, at least tentatively right now, the first meeting. I think that second meeting is, I think the goal is to have that canceled. If that's the case, I'd probably push off our second meeting just so we have a little time to plan any summer vacations and those type of things. So I'll try to stick with the same schedule as our board, our full board in July, just so everybody can kind of tentatively plan things. If you do have vacations planned, I know Minority Vice Chair Faber talked to me on something. If you hit Taylor on that and maybe myself, just so we kind of know what's kind of cooking for everybody this summer, that would be wonderful. So again, appreciate everyone's questions and willingness to reach out to local legislators. I know that we both all work hard on having relationships with our state folks on both sides of the aisle. I think that's important that we keep that, those relationships and work hard at doing that and bringing things home here for Kent County. So again, appreciate everyone's work, and this meeting is adjourned.